So when I first looked at this task, I'll be honest, I had no idea where to start. The idea of cutting people out of images and replacing them sounded simple, but I don't actually have piles of magazines lying around. The only ones I do have are my Frankie magazines, which I kind of treat like collectibles. So the thought of cutting them up was just straight away not happening. So instead of forcing myself into the traditional way of doing it, I paused and kind of thought, what was the point of the task? And to me, it wasn't really about cutting paper. It was about the removing and the replacing and seeing what happens when you disrupt an image. So I'm not sure if this counts as doing the task wrong, but I decided to scan my pages instead. It also got me thinking about doing this task in a classroom setting with younger years. I know the task instructions say that this task might be limiting as younger years wouldn't be able to use a scalpel. Scissors are safer and more accessible, especially for the younger students, but it's hard to get clean, detailed edges, especially when the pages are already going to be smaller than an A4 piece of paper from a magazine. It's really hard to get that clean silhouette outline. Because of this, I believe both tools have their place, but for this task, they can really limit the outcome if students are focused more on cutting neatly than actually exploring the idea behind the task. At first, I thought cutting the figures out digitally, maybe I was cheating, but I feel like it opened up more possibilities. I could take my time, zoom in, and erase really precisely. It actually got me a super clean silhouette without stressing about ruining anything. Made the whole process feel way less stressful and more experimental, which I think was kind of the point. So for the first artwork, I've called it Isle of Excess. The first image was from a Frankie article called I'll Always Love You, which is basically a love letter to supermarkets. I picked it because I liked how visually busy it already was. There's just rows and rows of product, all these repeating shapes and colours. It already had this kind of overwhelming feel to it. Originally, I cut out the entire silhouette of the woman pushing the trolley and replaced the whole figure with an image of plastic waste, bottles, packaging, all piled together. And at first, I thought it worked. It was very direct commentary on product waste. But when I sat and looked at it for a bit, it felt a little bit too disjointed, even though I know it's meant to be a little bit disjointed. So I went back and changed it, and instead of removing the entire figure, I kept the dress and only replaced the body parts with the plastic imagery. I feel like this change made a big difference. Keeping the dress kept the original retro feeling of the image. It still belonged in a very 60s supermarket scene, but now there was more contrast happening. The second piece is called Withering Self, and this one is of a figure holding an umbrella. And instead of filling the silhouette with something super bold or busy, I used a more subtle water texture of condensation. And it almost kind of looks like the figure is dissolving or fading into the background. I liked how the umbrella was bright and colourful and the body is almost disappearing. It creates this weird contrast where the thing that's meant to protect you stands out more than the person themselves. I think this piece taught me that not everything needs to be loud to be effective. Sometimes just a small shift in the texture or tone can completely change how an image feels. The third artwork is called Distance Between Us. At first, I was really leaning into the whole idea of men are from Mars, women are from Venus. So I actually tried placing an image of Mars behind the man and Venus behind the woman with their silhouettes. Conceptually, it made sense, and I thought it would be a strong starting point. But when I put it together, it just felt way too busy. There was too much going on, and it kind of took away from the image instead of adding to it. Felt like it was trying too hard to force an idea rather than let the image speak for itself a little bit. So I scrapped that and simplified it. Instead, I used a galaxy texture across both figures. As soon as I tried that, it just worked and felt better and more cohesive and less literal. Rather than spelling out the idea, it created more of a mood, something a bit surreal and open-ended. I also extended the galaxy into the mirror and removed the man's reflection completely. This part was really fun to experiment with, and it made the scene feel slightly off, and you could tell immediately what was wrong. Compared to my original idea, this version felt more resolved. It didn't feel as overcrowded as the second one, as the first one, and it gave the image more space to breathe. I found this entire process really fun. I usually go into projects with a clear outcome, and I know what I want it to kind of look like before I start, but this didn't really allow for that. Also, using digital tools instead of physically cutting things out changed the experience in a good way. It made the process more accessible and less stressful, especially thinking about how this would work in a classroom. If I was teaching this, I'd 100% do it digitally with younger students. It removes the pressure of messing up and lets them focus more on creative decisions. It also connects skills they're already developing using software, layering images, and thinking about a composition in a digital space. So even though I started this process feeling very unsure, it ended up being one of those tasks where you learn more just by doing and experimenting rather than planning anything out. Outagraphy as a process is actually more interesting than I expected. At first it just seems more like a collaging technique, but it's really about disruption. You're taking something familiar and slightly breaking it, removing what's meant to be there, and replacing the focal point with something unexpected.